Hello everyone, and welcome back. Imagine a world without electricity, without streaming music, without instant entertainment at your fingertips. The streets are muddy, the air thick with smoke, livestock, and unwashed humanity. Life is harsh, brutal, and fleeting. And somewhere in that world, a young musician walks with a lute slung across his back, a handful of hope, and a head full of melodies no one has asked for, but that soon might desperately need. Welcome to the life of a medieval bard. Tonight, we dive into a story that is part history, part legend, and entirely human. A tale of music, hunger, resilience, and the strange, fleeting joys that come with being a traveling performer in a world that does not value entertainment or comfort, and yet demands survival from every soul it claims. Picture a small village somewhere in medieval Europe. The year does not matter. It could be 1,000, 201,000, 350, or 1,450. What matters is the smell: boiled cabbage, unwashed animals, and the tang of wood smoke drifting from chimneys that never fully warm a single room. You are born here in a tiny one-room hut. Your parents are peasants, laborers, who live in service to the land and the whims of the local lord, their daily work dictated by the weather, the season, and the unpredictable demands of those above them. Your inheritance is minimal, a life dictated by toil, chronic fatigue, and the ever-present threat of disease. There is no safety net, no luxury, no guarantee you will see your 20th birthday. Yet within you is something rare, a gift, or perhaps a curse. You hum tunes while working, remember phrases and lines that others forget, and occasionally string words together in ways that delight or annoy those around you. To your family, it is confusing. Your mother whispers about witchcraft, your father mutters about laziness, and the local priest eyes you warily, sharpening his exorcism tools. And still, when you sing, people pause. For a fleeting moment, the peasants forget their aching backs and cracked hands. Even if the attention lasts only as long as it takes to miscount a turnip or trip over a muddy hoofprint, it is enough. You have power here, a tiny, fragile spark that tells you something remarkable. Your voice can matter. Then, as if the world had taken pity on you, one summer, a troupe of traveling performers enters your village. Their clothes are so brightly colored, it feels almost criminal against the dull backdrop of mud and straw. They smell faintly of ale and freedom, two things your family has not tasted in years. They tell stories of kings and heroes, of beautiful women and faraway lands. The villagers laugh, clap, and for 10 minutes forget the endless grind of feudal life. And in that laughter, you see your future. You want to step into it. You want to be a bard. You want your voice to carry beyond the mud. Your parents, naturally, do not agree. Your father envisions you taking over the family plow, a death trap disguised as tradition, one that has claimed ancestors before you. Your mother dreams of the monastery, where at least starvation is sanctified. But you are not made for plowing or celibacy. You are made for music, for movement, for the strange, wandering life of performance. You start small, writing songs about cows that will not yield milk, about the neighbor who fell into the village well. The villagers react. Some laugh, some throw vegetables. Success in this world is a flying turnip. One day, a passing bard hears you and takes you on as an apprentice. You think you have made it. You have not. You have simply signed up for a life of walking, hunger, and applause that rarely compensates. Your master, renowned only in confidence, becomes your guide to misery, polishing boots, carrying instruments, sleeping in barns, learning the harsh lessons of survival on the road. Your education is brutal. You learn that audiences remember confidence, not accuracy. You learn to sing only when expectations are low or the ale is high. You experience the constant damp of rain, the hunger that gnaws more fiercely than wolves, and the tedium of performing the same songs over and over, perfecting harmonies that are often stolen by your master. Yet, in this struggle, you begin to understand rhythm, not only in music, but in life itself. The cadence of footsteps on cobblestones, the repetition of toil, the pacing of performances in a world where distraction is rare and fleeting. Eventually, you are sent solo into the world. The tavern becomes your stage. Wooden and rickety, the air thick with smoke and ale. Patrons jeer, throw mugs, shout requests for songs you do not know. You press on. You strum. You rhyme. You dodge flying bread. At the end, you are rewarded with a few coins, maybe a piece of bread, sometimes just the satisfaction of having survived. And there is something in this chaos that is real. The laughter of a child, the nod of an old woman, the brief pause in daily labor where music threads itself into someone's day. This is the currency of your art. Here, performance is not about fame or wealth. It is about presence. You are seen, if only for a moment, and the world seems to soften around the sound of your song. Seeking greater fortune, you journey to noble courts. Towers, banners, marble floors. The allure of respect and payment is intoxicating. You perform a ballad praising lineage, valor, and beauty. And the nobles nod politely. Payment is sparse. Acknowledgement fleeting. You realize quickly they desire flattery, not truth. You become a propagandist of ego, crafting illusions that satisfy their vanity. Art in power structures rarely serves the artist. It becomes a tool, a reflection, a means of survival. The medieval bard learns to shape reality into pleasing forms, just as a modern musician, storyteller, or entertainer might adapt for an audience of one's superiors or critics. Beyond the nobility, rivals await. You expect camaraderie. You get competition. He steals your song. He heckles you. You duel in, rhyme in the market square, insulting, meter by meter. You carry a knife, not for bandits, for other performers. The road is harsh, resources scarce, and competition relentless. Your survival depends not only on skill, but on wit, timing, and a careful understanding of ego, both yours and others. Yet there is camaraderie in shared misery. Around campfires, among fellow wanderers, you trade songs, jokes, and stories. Even if the life is arduous, the shared human experience, cold, hungry, endlessly walking, becomes a kind of community, a fleeting family, bound by music and movement. Eventually, you return to village squares, chickens roaming, dogs sleeping, children asking for silly songs. You sing of harvest, love, and beer. They laugh. They throw cabbage. You take it. They pay in food. Here, you realize, for these folk, you matter. They do not care about titles. They care about laughter, distraction, and humanity. Your songs mean something. They are not immortal, but they are alive. The church is never far away. Clergy, view your secular songs with suspicion. You tread a line, crafting melodies that sound holy but carry hidden meanings, accepting labor in monasteries in exchange for food. navigating censorship while preserving your art. The road, however, never ends. Winter freezes your fingers, rain warps your instrument, and every step is a negotiation with the elements. Yet, when a traveler hums a tune you composed centuries later, you realize your legacy is not in fame, not in wealth, but in survival, persistence, and the faint echo of music threading through human memory. The life of a medieval bard is cold, damp, overlooked, underpaid, anonymous, and grueling. And yet, in surviving, performing, creating, and connecting even briefly with others, the bard achieves something remarkable, a small, enduring trace of humanity in a world designed to grind it out. The lesson is timeless. Even when recognition is absent and comfort rare, showing up, making your art, and persevering leaves a mark. And sometimes, that mark is more enduring than any crown, coin, or monument ever could be. From the moment you could walk, you had a way with words that made even the simplest phrases seem melodic. You hummed while doing chores, strummed sticks against pots, and found rhythms in the creak of floorboards or the drip of water from the roof. Your family, entrenched in the relentless grind of peasant life, could not understand this. Your father, hardened by decades of toil and disappointment, muttered constantly about laziness. He wanted you to learn the ways of the land, to inherit the family plow, to continue a tradition that had consumed generations before you. To him, poetry was useless. Song was dangerous. Talent, in a world where survival was the only currency, was a liability. Your mother watched with a mixture of fear and hope. She noticed your gift, but feared it. She whispered about witches and spirits, about divine tests and omens. Every time you composed a rhyme or hummed a tune while tending goats or fetching water, she glanced nervously toward the village priest. The priest, a man whose life revolved around moral authority and suspicion, took note of your oddities. You could memorize stories after hearing them only once. You could make a tune out of the simplest observation, the clatter of a cart, the squeal of a piglet, even the sway of a broom. To him, it was unnatural. To you, it was life. But what did it mean to have such talent in a world that barely acknowledged the existence of art? You were born into a society where entertainment was scarce and often harsh. Peasants rarely paused to enjoy a song. Work, famine, and disease dictated the rhythm of life. And yet, when you performed, even for a moment people stopped. They would glance at you, their hands frozen mid-labor, their mouths briefly still as the notes you produced drifted through the air. For a fleeting minute, the drudgery lifted. Eyes widened, children giggled. Even the gruff blacksmith raised an eyebrow in curiosity. That was enough to light something inside you, the realization that your voice had power. A dangerous, delicate power that demanded mastery. Your early experiments in song were humble. You wrote about simple village life, the troubles of cows that refused to be milked, the fall of a neighbor in a muddy ditch, or the way the wind rattled the roof shingles. Some laughed. Some threw vegetables. Each thrown turnip or rotten apple was a lesson in humility, a reminder that entertainment in the Middle Ages came with risk. Success was measured not in applause, but in the ability to survive another day with your dignity intact. Even in this constrained environment, your talent could not be ignored. Word spread slowly through the village. A passing traveler might pause at the sound of a melody drifting across the common. A local merchant might tip you with a crust of bread or a few coppers, though rarely enough to stave off hunger for more than a day. The dynamic between your burgeoning talent and your family's skepticism created tension, but it also sparked creativity. You learned to observe, to exaggerate, to find rhythm and rhyme in the ordinary. You discovered the subtle power of narrative, how to make a story of a spilled bucket of water entertaining, how to make a tale of an unfortunate goat memorable. This early period of your life, before formal apprenticeship or performance, before crowds, was formative in ways that would shape your entire career. The rejection by family and suspicion from the church taught resilience. Every whispered warning from your mother, every sharp glance from your father, every muttered comment from the priest reminded you that talent alone was not enough. It had to be honed, protected, and deployed strategically. You began to understand that a song could distract, delight, or even diffuse tension, but only if performed at the right time, to the right audience, with the right confidence. There were moments of brief triumph. Perhaps a traveling storyteller passed through the village and paused to watch you hum a tune while balancing a bucket of water. He might have nodded approvingly, dropped a coin in your hand, and continued on. These encounters, rare and fleeting, were the first proof that the world beyond the village existed and that your talents might one day find it. For you, the song became both weapon and shield. It allowed brief glimpses of freedom in a life otherwise constrained by mud, labor, and obligation. The village itself became a microcosm of society's attitudes toward art. Children watched in awe, learning your tunes by ear. Peasants were cautious, unsure whether to laugh or scold. Adults worried about wasted time, wasted energy, wasted potential. And in this delicate ecosystem, you learned early lessons in audience management, improvisation, and the psychology of attention. You discovered that the timing of a gesture, the inflection in a word, the unexpected pause in a melody could sway perception more than technical skill alone. By your teenage years, your reputation had quietly spread beyond your family. Elder villagers might recall a melody you sang as a child, and younger ones could hum it imperfectly, but with delight. This recognition was fragile. It came without reward, without formal acknowledgement, and certainly without wealth. But it was persistent. The world took notice in the smallest ways, preparing you for the inevitable moment when opportunity would arrive, not in the form of a noble court, but in the humble guise of a wandering bard, a fellow traveler who saw promise where others saw folly. At home, tensions persisted. Your father's frustration grew as you refused to take up the plow, preferring instead to carry a lute or strum a makeshift instrument. Your mother vacillated between worry and pride, unsure whether your talents would save you or condemn you. And the priest, ever vigilant, began to consider whether your abilities were a sign of divine favor or a test of virtue. It was a delicate balance. Your gifts were undeniable, yet perilous. Survival depended as much on cunning, timing, and obedience to social norms as it did on skill or inspiration. And so, your early life as a budding bard became a crucible. You were not just learning music or poetry. You were learning endurance, patience, and strategy. Every day was a lesson in observation. Which villager would laugh? Which child would be delighted? Which adult might scold or throw something? Every improvised tune, every hastily memorized rhyme, every small victory of attention taught you the subtle art of engagement. By the time a traveling bard eventually noticed you, you were already seasoned in ways that formal apprenticeships could never teach. You had learned to navigate a world that did not value art, to persist in the face of doubt, and to find joy in the tiniest moments of recognition. Even in its hardship, This period of life established the foundation for everything that came later. You had discovered the thrill of connecting with an audience, the tension between talent and survival, and the bittersweet realization that applause might be rare, fleeting, or even dangerous. In a world designed to suppress wonder and reward labor alone, you had found a way to survive on music, wit, and the fragile power of performance. You were a bard before anyone called you one, a weaver of stories, a manipulator of attention, and a creator of fleeting moments of joy in a harsh, unyielding landscape. And here lies the lesson for anyone watching today. Talent alone is never enough. The world will doubt, scorn, and test you. But persistence, observation, and the willingness to create, even when unappreciated, can carve a space for your voice to be heard. It is not the applause, the coin, or the recognition that matters most. It is the act of creating, surviving, and touching lives in the smallest, most ephemeral ways. Every tune hummed in secret, every rhyme crafted on a dull morning, every smile earned from a momentary pause in work was preparation. It was the making of a bard, not in fame or fortune, but in resilience, craft, and the quiet knowledge that the world, someday, might take notice. From the moment the wandering bard finally noticed you, it felt like a miracle. Here was someone who understood, who recognized the spark you had nurtured in secret, the melodies hummed in the shadows of chores, the rhymes whispered under a sky streaked with smoke and stars. He offered you apprenticeship, and you accepted without hesitation. What you did not understand, and what no one bothered to explain, was that being an apprentice bard was not glamorous. It was relentless, exhausting, and often humiliating. You were handed not fame, not coins, not recognition, but work. Endless, grueling work. Your first days were a blur of heavy lifting, tuning instruments that seemed impossible to master, and memorizing songs you did not understand. The master, a man of confidence and questionable hygiene, expected perfection while offering little instruction. You carried his gear, polished his boots, and hummed harmonies that he would later take credit for. Each evening ended with a performance, and each performance came with its own set of hazards. If the ale was too weak, the audience slept. If too strong, they heckled. If you played too loudly, you were corrected. If too softly, you were ignored. If a note was missed, reprimand followed. And yet, no matter what you did, you were never truly ready in your master's eyes. Travel became a constant. Villages blurred into one another, each with the same muddy streets, the same inns smelling of wet straw, mold, and old regrets. You slept in barns, behind carts, or on the cold ground beneath the stars, your blanket thin, your instrument precious, and your hunger persistent. Rain was not just an inconvenience. It was a hazard. Water warped the lute, rotted clothes, and chilled you to the bone. You learned to protect the instrument above yourself, because a broken lute meant no performance, no coin, no survival. Your body ached constantly. Your hands blistered from strings and tools, and your feet bore the punishment of endless roads. The apprenticeship was as much about survival as it was about music. You learned to time performances, to gauge the mood of crowds, and to read the subtleties of social interaction. You discovered that audiences respond more to confidence than skill. Even if the song was flawed, if you played boldly, half the room assumed mastery. You learned to improvise endlessly, adapting to drunken requests, flying vegetables, and the occasional dog that wandered onto your stage. Every misstep was a lesson. Every insult, a reminder of the harsh economy of attention. Food was sparse. Coins were rare. Occasionally, A drunken farmer would hand you a chicken, which would immediately escape or run into the muck. You were told it was symbolic. You suspected karma. And yet, through hunger, exhaustion, and ridicule, you learned rhythm not only in music but in life, the pacing of travel, the repetition of routine, and the cadence of small victories amidst constant challenge. You absorbed lessons that no school could provide: patience, improvisation, observation, and the delicate balance of ego, yours, your master's, and that of every audience member. Every day offered new trials. You were subjected to mockery by townspeople, sometimes by your own master, who demonstrated that survival in performance required cunning. He showed you that drunken audiences could be persuaded to applause with timing and confidence. He taught you the cruel art of making mistakes seem deliberate, of turning errors into performance, of projecting joy when inside despair gnawed at your stomach and your bones. Nights were cold, roads muddy, inns overcrowded, and your only constant companions were insects, livestock, and the occasional fellow traveler with whom you shared fire and stories. Yet, even in hardship, there was growth. You mastered the lute, the flute, and occasionally improvised percussion. You memorized songs, learned local legends, and began crafting narratives that could bend reality, glorify heroes, or bring laughter to those in despair. You discovered the subtle power of performance. A well-timed pause, a glance, a movement of your hands, or the rise and fall of your voice could hold attention, sway opinions, and even command respect from those who had little reason to give it. These skills would become the foundation of your career, honed under pressure and necessity. Social skills were crucial. You learned quickly that survival was as much about diplomacy as music. You navigated drunken patrons, hostile innkeepers, and the occasional rogue or bandit. You discovered that the road was as dangerous as it was formative. You became adept at reading faces, understanding moods, and responding to subtle cues. You learned that humor could diffuse tension, that improvisation could save your life, and that sometimes a small lie, an embellished story, a dramatic gesture was necessary to preserve your place in the world. The apprenticeship was also a lesson in hierarchy and politics within the bardic community. You witnessed the subtle rivalries, the quiet sabotage, the theft of songs, and the careful guarding of reputation. You understood that the world of performers, even in humble villages, was a battlefield. Each town, each tavern, each festival was a microcosm of competition, where survival depended on cleverness as much as skill. You began learning not just music, but strategy, when to show talent, when to hide it, and how to make yourself indispensable without provoking envy. Physical endurance became a necessity. Roads were unforgiving. Rivers had to be forded, mountains traversed, and fields crossed, often barefoot or in shoes ill-equipped for travel. Weather was relentless, from freezing winter nights to scorching summer days. Your body hardened. Your fingers learned precision despite blisters, and your lungs adapted to cold, damp air. The apprenticeship transformed you from a naive village child into a survivor capable of navigating a world that demanded resilience above all else. Despite the hardships, there were fleeting moments of triumph. A child laughed at a tune you played. An old woman nodded in appreciation. A fellow bard offered a rare compliment, and you felt the spark of recognition that had first inspired you. These moments reminded you why you endured, why you carried the lute through mud, why you sang in the rain, and why you continued to perfect your craft despite minimal reward. They were rare but priceless, and they cemented the love of music in your soul. By the end of your apprenticeship, after years of walking, performing, surviving, and learning, you were transformed. Your fingers could dance across strings with precision. Your voice could fill a hall or command silence in a rowdy tavern. Your mind had learned patience, observation, improvisation, and strategy. You could read an audience, negotiate with a hostile innkeeper, and turn a disastrous performance into a memorable one. You understood rhythm in both music and life, learned to adapt endlessly, and discovered the importance of subtlety, diplomacy, and resilience. The master eventually pronounced, "You ready to travel alone?" You imagined freedom, glory, and respect. In reality, it meant carrying your own instrument, surviving without guidance, and navigating the unpredictability of the road. But you were prepared, not by wealth or comfort, but by experience, endurance, and the subtle mastery of survival through performance. The apprenticeship had been brutal, relentless, and punishing, but it had forged you into a bard capable of facing the world alone. Hunger, fatigue, ridicule, and cold had been your teachers. Mistakes, missteps, and minor humiliations had been your curriculum. And now, armed with skills, knowledge, and a fragile confidence, you were ready to step onto the path that would define your life, for better or worse. The early apprenticeship was the crucible of your craft. Every bruise, every blister, every long march through mud or rain, every jeer, every stolen song, every drunken challenge had shaped you. You were no longer the boy humming while fetching water. You were a bard forged in adversity, capable of surviving in a world that valued nothing but perseverance and adaptability. In this harsh world, survival, not recognition, was the ultimate reward. And yet, through it all, you carried a melody inside you, a melody that refused to be silenced, that would echo in villages, taverns, and eventually in the hearts of those who would unknowingly pass it on. Finally, the day comes when your master declares you ready to travel alone. You imagine freedom, respect, maybe even coin in your purse. In reality, it is a baptism by mud, rain, and indifference. You carry your loot, a few meager belongings, and a heart full of hope tempered with dread. The road stretches ahead, long and uncertain, lined with villages that smell of livestock, smoke, and human toil. Every step is both literal and symbolic, a movement away from the protection of apprenticeship and into the relentless world of survival, improvisation, and performance that might pay off or not. The first solo performance is in a tavern, a place as intimidating as it is essential. Its wooden beams sag under the weight of years. Smoke from hearths and hearth fires mixes with spilled ale and the tang of unwashed bodies. Patrons are red-faced, drunk, and unpredictable. Some cheer, some jeer, and some could topple a table with a swing of their arm. Your hands shake as you adjust the loot, your stomach knots, and yet you remind yourself, you are prepared. Years of apprenticeship have armed you with skill, strategy, and the hard-earned ability to improvise when chaos reigns. You step onto a table, a rickety stage that creaks ominously. Clearing your throat, you begin a simple ballad, a story of a knight, a maiden, and events that likely never happened. 2 lines in, a drunk patron burps perfectly in rhythm with your chorus. By the 3rd verse, someone shouts a request for a song you do not know, about goats or some other absurdity. You press on, aware that stopping is both unprofessional and dangerous. You learn quickly that solo performance is not about perfection. It is about endurance, improvisation, and maintaining presence in the face of unpredictability. bread and mugs fly. Insults echo. Fights erupt over minor disagreements. You dodge, smile, and continue strumming, learning to read the crowd not in smiles or frowns, but in subtle signs. The grip on a mug, a shifting foot, a glint of anticipation or impatience in a villager's eye. Each performance becomes a master class in resilience, observation, and adaptation. The reward is minimal, a few copper coins, perhaps a crust of bread, sometimes just the fleeting acknowledgement that you survived and were not thrown out. Yet, each survival is a small triumph, reinforcing the delicate balance of skill and instinct that defines your profession. Travel becomes both punishment and teacher. Roads are muddy, often flooded. Inns are overcrowded, malodorous, and expensive. Rain warps the loot, chills your body, and makes every step treacherous. Nights are spent in barns, behind carts, or under thin blankets, listening to animals and neighbors alike. Hunger gnaws relentlessly, forcing creativity not only in music, but in daily survival. A passing traveler, a kind widow, or a merchant might offer bread or ale, but these are temporary, inconsistent lifelines. You quickly learn that the road demands flexibility, improvisation, and the capacity to endure discomfort as an essential part of artistry. Even when performing for peasants, lessons emerge. You learn that humor can distract from monotony, that timing is more important than technical accuracy, and that reading a crowd is a survival skill. Children laugh. Adults nod grudgingly. And occasionally, someone offers a coin. You realize that in this world, connection matters more than recognition, and that the smallest moments of joy, an amused laugh, a polite clap, are worth more than the grandest palace performance. The essence of survival as a bard is persistence, performing repeatedly, learning from mistakes, and turning even failure into opportunity. Solo performance is also a lesson in diplomacy and subtlety. Patrons range from kind-hearted villagers to cantankerous innkeepers. One wrong word, one misplayed note, or one ill-timed joke can end the evening in humiliation or injury. You learn to judge the mood, to adjust your delivery, and to improvise lyrics and melody on the fly. The mastery lies not in memorized perfection, but in adaptability, ability to transform chaos into entertainment. Every performance is both theater and negotiation, a balance of skill, wit, and courage. Seasons pass unnoticed. Summer is sticky, winter is bitter, and spring brings muddy fields and swollen rivers. Your instrument, your constant companion, bears the brunt of travel, warped strings, broken pegs, and worn wood. Your fingers blister, your voice cracks, your body aches, yet you continue, aware that the only alternative is silence. And for a bard, silence is death. Along the way, you meet fellow travelers, jugglers, jesters, wandering priests, and odd merchants. Some offer camaraderie, others competition. You learn to navigate these social terrains, understanding that survival depends as much on human interaction as on technical skill. Despite the hardships, the world offers glimpses of reward. A widow gives you soup, a child asks for a joyful song, or a group of villagers gathers to listen attentively. In these moments, you recognize the purpose of your craft: to create connection, to bring transient joy, to interrupt the endless grind of survival with laughter, music, and storytelling. Your art becomes a lifeline not just for you, but for those who pause to hear it. You discover that the most meaningful audiences are not nobles or patrons with silver, but ordinary people whose daily lives are unrelenting and harsh. Their appreciation, however small or chaotic, validates your existence. Performing solo also sharpens the technical and creative aspects of your craft. You learn to improvise melodies to fit the mood, adjust tempo for crowd engagement, and modulate volume and rhythm to capture attention. You experiment with new instruments, with storytelling techniques, with humor and pathos. Every failure teaches, every unexpected reaction informs. Your craft becomes a living, evolving skill, molded by experience, shaped by necessity, and honed by the relentless unpredictability of the road. One night, after a particularly trying performance, you find yourself counting coins that are insufficient for even a meager meal. The tavern is noisy, drunkards bicker, and your instrument smells of sweat and ale. Yet, sitting by a fire, you strum softly, watching sparks dance in the night air. You realize that survival itself is triumph. Each song performed, each audience engaged, and each day endured reinforces your identity as a bard. The hardships do not diminish you, they refine you. Your music, imperfect and raw, carries the weight of experience, connecting with listeners in ways polished performance never could. Solo performance also teaches resilience against repetition and monotony. You sing the same songs in different villages, improvising variations to keep them fresh. Patrons forget previous verses, allowing you to recycle melodies without losing impact. Each performance demands energy, creativity, and endurance, reinforcing the idea that a bard's power lies not in fame or wealth, but in persistence, adaptability, and the ability to survive in an unpredictable world. The road becomes both a classroom and a proving ground, testing not only musical skill, but mental fortitude, patience, and problem-solving. Through countless performances, you begin to understand a profound truth. Art is a tool of survival. Laughter, attention, and engagement become currency. And mastery is measured not in applause, but in endurance. Each village, each tavern, each audience is a microcosm of the world's indifference and chaos. You navigate it through skill, observation, and intuition. You learn that a song can entertain, soothe, provoke, or distract, and that the ability to manipulate these effects is essential to survival. Eventually, you achieve small victories. Patrons laugh, children hum your melodies, and occasionally a coin or loaf of bread lands in your hand. These moments are fleeting, but vital, sustaining you through endless days and nights of uncertainty. You realize that recognition is transient, that fame is rare, and that wealth is nearly non-existent. Yet, the connection, the ephemeral joy of performance remains. It is in these moments, amidst chaos and discomfort, that the essence of the bard's life emerges. The power to transform ordinary, harsh existence into brief, shared experiences of wonder and delight. By the end of this period, you are no longer merely an apprentice or a novice. You are a traveler, performer, and survivor. You have learned to endure harsh conditions, navigate difficult social interactions, improvise endlessly, and maintain your craft under pressure. Your music carries both your voice and the echoes of countless hardships endured along the way. Each note, each lyric, each improvised line embodies the lessons of survival, resilience, and adaptability. Solo performance has shaped not only your skill, but your character, preparing you for a life defined not by wealth or fame, but by persistence, creativity, and the unyielding pursuit of connection through art. Finally, the day arrives when the noble court becomes your stage. After countless nights in taverns and villages, you are thrust into a world of gilded walls, banners, and polished floors. Unlike the taverns, where chaos allowed room for improvisation, the court demands refinement, poise, and careful navigation of social hierarchies. A single misstep, misplayed chord, mispronounced word, or poorly timed pause can result in humiliation or expulsion, leaving you with neither shelter nor coin. The journey itself is arduous. Roads are muddy, rutted, and patrolled by wary guards. Your loot, worn and weathered, bears the marks of rain, mud, and constant travel. Each night, you rehearse, perfecting songs for patrons accustomed to luxury rather than the unpredictable mirth of peasants. Arriving at the castle, you are struck by grandeur, towering walls, flickering torchlight, banners swaying in the wind. Yet beneath the beauty lies tension. The nobles are trained observers, sharp and discerning, attuned to artifice. Every note, every gesture, every lyric will be scrutinized. Here, endurance alone is insufficient. Precision, diplomacy, and subtlety become paramount. The first performance is a careful balancing act. You play a ballad praising the host lord's lineage, each rhyme elevating him, each lyric glorifying his deeds. Embellishment is not optional, it is required. The audience responds in subtle measures. Polite claps, nods, murmurs. A child giggles at an innocent line. A noble whispers with a companion. Success is measured differently than in taverns. It is restrained, mediated, and socially coded. Even faint approval is valuable, securing shelter, a meal, and perhaps coin. Requests arrive suddenly. A song of love, praise for valor, a legend of distant lands. Improvisation is essential. Accuracy is secondary. You learn that the most prized skill is manipulating perception, turning exaggeration into believable flattery, weaving fiction into homage. Court politics complicate matters further. Rival bards, ambitious courtiers, and watchful observers scrutinize every performance. A single misquote or poorly timed jest can become gossip, threatening your reputation. The court is a delicate ecosystem where words are as sharp as swords. Humor must be measured, gestures moderated, words chosen strategically. Survival relies on performance and perception alike. The culture of the court reinforces grandeur in every aspect: music, dress, conversation, and demeanor. Your appearance, your instrument, your tone, all require calibration to avoid ridicule. Fatigue is masked with poise. Mistakes are transformed into charm. Every movement, chord, and lyric is intentional. A performance of survival as much as artistry. Small victories, nods, smiles, discreet coins signal both recognition and continued survival. The court tests adaptability and creativity. Songs improvised on demand, stories of battles, legends of heroic ancestors. You weave truth, fiction, and flattery into seamless narratives. Each performance requires focus, audience awareness, and instantaneous adjustment. The bard's power lies not only in skill, but in the ability to read and respond to a sophisticated, demanding audience. Through repetition, you master the rhythm of the court, which tales captivate, which gestures resonate, which humor entertains without offense. Flattery becomes currency, observation becomes armor, and subtlety ensures survival. Every performance reinforces lessons learned on roads and in taverns. Confidence outweighs perfection. Improvisation is vital, and resilience is essential. By the end of your first year, your music sharpens, improvisation becomes instinctive, and perception of human behavior reaches fine acuity. You operate with strategy, intuition, and social understanding, not relying solely on skill or luck. Yet you remain aware of the precariousness. One mistake could cost you favor, respect, or shelter. Rewards are modest but meaningful, teaching patience, diplomacy, and strategic thinking. The noble court becomes a classroom in subtlety, artistry, and social mastery. You emerge, transformed, skilled, adaptable, and equipped to navigate any audience or environment. Talent alone is insufficient. Performance is inseparable from perception, and survival requires both skill and cunning. Your music evolves technically, emotionally, socially, and politically. You are now a bard prepared to face any challenge, wielding art as both armor and tool, with mastery of performance inseparable from mastery of life itself. As your reputation grows, so too does the scrutiny of those who share your craft. You quickly learn that the world of bards is not a fraternity of fellow artists bonded by music and shared poverty. It is a battlefield, a delicate ecosystem of ego, envy, and ambition. Every village, tavern, or court becomes a stage, not only for performance, but for rivalry, where every note can provoke admiration or sabotage. You discover that surviving among your peers is as challenging as surviving on the road or in noble courts. The first encounter with a rival bard is unsettling. He smiles politely, but his eyes gleam with competition. Within moments, you notice subtle acts. One of your songs is played louder, faster, or with a flourish you did not intend. A lyric you wrote is repeated as if it were his own. You feel the sting of theft, the betrayal of imitation, and the subtle intimidation of experience wielded like a weapon. The crowd responds with enthusiasm, unaware that your creation has been hijacked. You are reminded that in the bardic world, imitation is flattery, only if the original suffers no loss. Rivalries are not confined to theft. Gossip, sabotage, and petty cruelty are common. One bard might spread rumors that you are lazy, that your skill is exaggerated, or that your music is unoriginal. Another might deliberately misinterpret your performance, drawing laughter at your expense. You begin to understand that the road is not only a trial of endurance, but also a stage for subtle battles of reputation. In this environment, survival depends on both skill and cunning. Every encounter teaches lessons in strategy, observation, and psychological insight. You develop techniques to defend your work and reputation. You sharpen lyrics, perfect rhythms, and learn to read the intentions of fellow bards. You observe the hierarchy of talent and influence, noting who commands attention, who thrives on subterfuge, and who uses charm as armor. You discover that confidence, timing, and clever improvisation can neutralize attacks. A well-placed jest, a rapid adaptation of melody, or an unexpected flourish can reclaim both audience and dignity. The stage becomes a chessboard where every gesture, pause, and note matters. Duels of wit and rhyme emerge as a form of social currency. These are not violent encounters, but contests in which creativity, sharpness, and memory are weaponized. You engage in impromptu exchanges with rivals, insults delivered in perfect meter, clever plays on words, and rapid improvisation. Each duel is both exhilarating and dangerous. A misstep results in embarrassment, a clever verse wins admiration, and the audience becomes judge, jury, and occasional accomplice. These contests teach you precision, quick thinking, and the importance of mental agility in performance. Competition extends beyond personal duels to audience perception. Patrons, whether in taverns or courts, are influenced by comparisons, and rivals exploit this. One might mimic your style, exaggerate your flaws, or preemptively perform pieces you intended to showcase. You learn to anticipate, to innovate constantly, and to maintain your identity amidst imitation and manipulation. The lessons here are subtle but invaluable. Survival in the bardic world is as much about strategy and awareness as it is about musical talent. You also discover the social dynamics among bards. Alliances are fragile, based on convenience, shared audiences, or mutual disdain for stronger rivals. Friendships are rare, loyalty conditional, and trust difficult to earn. Every bard operates as both competitor and collaborator, understanding that the line between support and sabotage is thin. Observing interactions, you learn to navigate social networks, deploy diplomacy, and use humor or charm to mitigate conflict. Survival demands political acumen as much as artistry. Despite the challenges, rivalry has its benefits. Competition drives you to improve, to refine technique, to experiment with storytelling, and to innovate musically. You learn to anticipate audience reactions, craft more compelling melodies, and develop improvisational skills that would be impossible in isolation. The pressure of rivalry sharpens every performance, pushing you beyond what comfort or solitary practice could achieve. Every challenge, every duel, every stolen verse becomes an opportunity to grow stronger, faster, and more versatile. Traveling with rivals introduces new lessons. Shared paths force cooperation for survival, protecting instruments, securing shelter, and navigating dangerous roads. You learn to balance competition with pragmatism. A rival may be your enemy on stage, but your ally against bandits or harsh weather. These delicate partnerships test judgment, negotiation, and the ability to separate personal grievance from practical necessity. The road teaches you resilience, adaptability, and the value of strategic compromise. Over time, you gain recognition not only for skill, but for cunning, confidence, and endurance. You become known for your ability to handle pressure, to recover from setbacks, and to deliver compelling performances under scrutiny. Rivalry has honed your instincts, sharpened your abilities, and taught you to thrive amidst uncertainty. You understand that your reputation is both fragile and valuable, requiring constant care, observation, and calculated action. Ultimately, you realize that rivalry among bards is a microcosm of the broader world. The lessons learned, adaptability, strategy, creativity under pressure, and social navigation prepare you for future challenges in courts, festivals, and public gatherings. Competition becomes a tool, not merely a source of stress. It motivates growth, enhances performance, and deepens your understanding of human nature. Through rivalry, you not only survive, but begin to master the art of influence, improvisation, and resilience that defines the life of a wandering bard. Even amidst constant challenges, moments of connection emerge. You find mutual respect in fleeting interactions, a nod from a competitor after a well-executed verse, a shared laugh at an absurd improvisation, or a moment of camaraderie around a campfire. These moments remind you that art transcends rivalry. Music and storytelling are communal threads that bind bards together, even when competition is fierce. You understand that the essence of performance is not only to entertain, but to communicate, to create ephemeral connections that outlast rivalry and hardship. Through years of travel, performance, and rivalry, your identity as a bard solidifies. You are no longer merely a novice or apprentice. You are a craftsman of improvisation, a strategist of human interaction, and a survivor of the road's harsh lessons. Rivalry has forged resilience, honed instincts, and instilled the adaptability required to thrive in both peasant taverns and noble courts. The bards you once feared or envied become benchmarks for your skill, motivation for innovation, and cautionary examples of what failure looks like when arrogance replaces strategy. By the end of this phase, you are confident in your craft and your capacity to navigate complexity. Rivalry has been a relentless teacher, forcing you to anticipate, improvise, and assert your presence. You have learned the subtleties of performance, the nuances of audience perception, and the critical importance of social intelligence. These lessons, born from competition and adversity, equip you not only to survive as a bard, but to influence, entertain, and endure in a world that is as unpredictable as it is demanding. After years navigating the perils of taverns, noble courts, and rivalries, you begin to crave something familiar, something grounded in reality, the company of the common folk. The peasants, farmers, and villagers who once threw turnips at your apprentice self now represent a simpler, more honest audience. They do not require perfection, flattery, or subtle diplomacy. They respond to sincerity, humor, and the rhythm of life they know intimately. Returning to them is not just a homecoming. It is a test of whether your craft can survive without the polish of courts or the tension of rivalry. The journey back to village life is humbling. Roads remain muddy, inns are crowded, and rain continues to challenge both instrument and body. Yet, unlike the uncertain expectations of nobility or the cutthroat competition of fellow bards, the villages offer something else: immediacy. Every song has an instant impact. A laugh, a clap, or a groan tells you more than a week of courtly applause ever could. You begin to notice the subtle ways in which your music touches daily life. The farmer hums a tune while tending his fields. Children skip along the path, keeping rhythm with your lute, and a widow smiles while cooking by the hearth, listening through the open door. These moments, small but profound, remind you why you began the path of a bard in the first place. Performing for the common folk requires a different kind of adaptation. Unlike the courts, they do not care for embellished stories of noble exploits or careful flattery. They care about life as they live it: hard labor, fleeting joy, superstition, love, loss, and the occasional absurdity of existence. You craft songs about harvests, weather, drunken villagers, and the occasional absurd mishap, like the miller who fell into his own flour barrel. Your humor becomes sharper, your timing more attuned to human quirks, and your storytelling richer because it must resonate with lived experience rather than imagination or political gain. The villages, however, are unpredictable. Audiences fluctuate in mood and attention. One day, everyone gathers eagerly, hanging on each verse. Another day, a fight breaks out over spilled ale. A goat wanders into your performance space, or a child cries, disrupting your rhythm. You learn to improvise constantly, adjusting lyrics, tempo, and delivery to match the moment. Unlike the controlled environments of noble courts, village performances demand flexibility, presence, and resilience. Your craft must bend without breaking, like a willow swaying in a storm. Over time, you begin to see the value of subtle artistry in these humble spaces. You incorporate pauses for laughter, use familiar phrases that anchor your stories in local culture, and play with rhythms that mimic daily work: the pounding of the mill, the clatter of hoofbeats, the rush of river water. Every performance becomes both entertainment and ritual, a shared acknowledgement of the trials and triumphs of ordinary life. The music bridges gaps between generations, connects families, and provides a temporary escape from labor, misfortune, and routine. Your presence in the village gradually becomes part of its rhythm. You are no longer merely a performer, but a participant in communal life. Children run alongside you, offering small gifts of food. Adults ask for songs to mark weddings, births, or seasonal festivals. Elders seek ballads that preserve memory and history. In this environment, your artistry is not judged by technical perfection or political savvy, but by your ability to connect, to evoke emotion, and to provide fleeting joy in a harsh, unforgiving world. The return to common folk also brings reflection. You compare your experiences in courts and among rival bards to this simpler, honest life. There is no need for flattery, no pressure to outshine a peer, no scrutiny over minor mistakes. Mistakes here are met with laughter or gentle reproach, teaching you that imperfection has value, that humor can transform error into charm, and that the shared human experience matters more than acclaim or coin. You begin to understand the profound satisfaction of performing for those who cannot be swayed by artifice. They respond to authenticity. Despite the relative simplicity, challenges remain. Survival is still precarious. Payment is inconsistent. A loaf of bread, a handful of coins, or a warm meal may be all you receive. Weather, illness, and the constant demands of travel remain threats. You must negotiate shelter, food, and safety as you always have. Yet these hardships feel different, tempered by the connection between your music and the lives it touches. The reward is no longer recognition alone, but the visible, immediate effect of your songs on human hearts. Performances for common folk also allow you to experiment freely. You play with melodies, insert improvisational humor, and create new verses inspired by local events. If a farmer's cow refuses to give milk, you write a verse about it. If a child trips over a stone, you weave it into your narrative. Your creativity is no longer constrained by social hierarchy or rivalry, but enriched by immediacy and relevance. Every song is both reflection and creation, connecting past, present, and imagination. Over time, you cultivate a reputation not just as a skilled musician, but as a storyteller attuned to human experience. Villagers begin to seek your presence during festivals, gatherings, and ceremonies. Your music becomes a tool for memory and identity, a means to preserve communal history, celebrate achievements, and navigate adversity. You find satisfaction in small acts, a song that cheers a widow, a verse that consoles a grieving family, a melody that inspires children to dance and laugh. These are your victories, tangible and enduring, far more meaningful than coin or title. The life of a wandering bard among the common folk also teaches resilience, humility, and empathy. You see suffering, struggle, and resilience mirrored in the faces of your audience. You learn to listen as much as to perform, to observe as much as to act. Your music becomes a dialogue, a shared experience, rather than a one-sided display. You understand that art's power lies not in accolades, but in its capacity to illuminate the human condition. Even briefly, in the midst of toil and uncertainty, you also learn to navigate community dynamics. Villages are tightly knit, reputations are fragile, and missteps are noticed quickly. A poorly chosen lyric could offend, a forgotten verse could disappoint, and a delayed arrival could frustrate hosts. You develop social intelligence, observing relationships, understanding expectations, and adjusting behavior accordingly. This nuanced engagement strengthens your craft, allowing you to create songs that resonate deeply while navigating complex social landscapes. Over the years, your artistry evolves. Songs once focused on noble deeds or abstract tales now reflect the rhythm, humor, and resilience of everyday life. You find beauty in simplicity, complexity in routine, and meaning in shared experience. You no longer seek fame or wealth, but rather the ephemeral connection created by a well-placed note, a humorous lyric, or a poignant verse. The road and the villages together teach that the value of a bard lies in the ability to endure, adapt, and engage meaningfully with the world, regardless of audience size or status. By the time you have spent years among the common folk, you emerge as a master of adaptation, empathy, and storytelling. You are skilled in improvisation, diplomacy, and social navigation. You have survived harsh roads, fickle audiences, and rival bards. But it is here, among the peasants and villagers, that you find the deepest fulfillment. Your songs carry not only melody, but meaning. They become conduits for human connection, memory, and shared experience. You learn that true artistry lies not in wealth, fame, or recognition, but in the ability to touch lives, however briefly, through music, rhythm, and storytelling. In this return, you finally understand the enduring power of your craft. Music is more than sound. It is a lifeline, a bridge, a mirror of society, and a repository of collective memory. In the laughter, applause, and quiet reflection of common folk, you discover purpose, resilience, and the authentic essence of being a bard. Survival is no longer simply about food or shelter. It is about meaning, connection, and legacy. You realize that even when fame fades, even when coins are scarce, and even when instruments wear thin, your songs and stories live on in the hearts of those who listened. The bond forged with the common folk transcends time, social hierarchy, and hardship, becoming your true and lasting reward. While the villages welcomed your music with laughter, applause, and occasional coin, another challenge awaited. The ever-watchful eyes of the Church. In medieval Europe, the Church was not only a spiritual authority, but also a social and political power that touched every village, town, and court. Its influence extended to the moral and cultural fabric of society, and bards like you were under constant scrutiny. Songs that celebrated love, mischief, or earthly pleasure were viewed through a lens of suspicion. Even the most innocuous verse could attract moral censure, force censorship, or outright bans. Learning to navigate this invisible web of rules became as critical as mastering rhythm, melody, or improvisation. The first lesson came subtly. You performed a playful ballad for a village feast, weaving humor, clever wordplay, and tales of local folly into the melody. The peasants laughed uproariously. Children clapped along, and adults nodded in appreciation. But afterward, the local priest approached, a thin smile masking clear disapproval. His words were measured but firm. Be mindful of what you sing. The young, the innocent, and the faithful watch, and your music has the power to corrupt. You quickly realized that laughter among villagers could easily be interpreted as moral danger by those with authority. From then on, every song carried dual purposes, entertaining the audience and avoiding ecclesiastical censure. You learned to encode meaning, to veil humor and critique behind metaphor and subtle wordplay. A seemingly innocent love song might contain layered references to vice and folly, while still appearing reverent and harmless to any clergy listening. Double entendres became tools of survival, allowing you to convey depth, satire, or critique without incurring punishment. Each performance was not merely a display of artistry, but also an exercise in diplomacy, subterfuge, and careful negotiation with authority. Visits to monasteries or churches further reinforced this lesson. Monks often invited or demanded your presence for spiritual celebrations, festivals, or labor contributions disguised as retreats. You learned quickly that in these sacred spaces, obedience, humility, and symbolic gestures were as important as musical skill. Hours spent copying hymns, scrubbing floors, or rehearsing approved chants became opportunities to study rhythm, vocal control, and storytelling within strict boundaries. Humor and improvisation had to be carefully calibrated. A misplaced joke could provoke more than embarrassment. It could end your permission to perform in a whole region. Despite the constraints, these interactions with the church offered valuable insights. You observed how ritual, cadence, and repetition could enhance memory, evoke emotion, and captivate attention. Sacred music's solemnity taught you the power of dynamics, contrast, and timing. You began to incorporate these lessons into your own repertoire, blending secular stories with the melodic structures and harmonies learned in sacred settings. In this way, censorship inadvertently refined your artistry, compelling you to innovate within limits and find new methods of expression. Balancing the expectations of the church and the desires of your audience required constant vigilance. Village audiences sought humor, relatable stories, and cathartic release, while religious authorities demanded propriety, piety, and moral alignment. You learned to tailor performances to context, playful verses for feasts, allegorical tales for festivals, and carefully veiled narratives for gatherings with clergy present. Improvisation became a crucial skill, allowing you to respond to unexpected scrutiny while maintaining the flow of music and narrative. You also discovered that negotiation was a key part of survival. Explaining a song as symbolic, allegorical, or instructive could prevent punishment. Claiming that humor was intended to teach a lesson or that a playful metaphor honored divine order often placated religious authorities. These verbal negotiations became a performance in themselves, blending rhetoric, confidence, and subtle charm. You learned to read expressions, anticipate objections, and deliver justifications convincingly. Survival, as with music, was an art form requiring flexibility, intelligence, and social acuity. Over time, you became adept at using the church's influence to enhance your performances rather than limit them. A subtle reference to a saint, a moral lesson hidden in verse, or a cleverly disguised nod to a religious ritual could satisfy clergy while delighting the audience. You discovered that constraints could inspire creativity, restrictions in lyrics, thematic limitations, and structural expectations forced you to innovate, layering meaning and subtext into every performance. Your songs became more sophisticated, resonant, and memorable as a result. The challenge of censorship also taught resilience and adaptability. You learned that no performance, audience, or authority was permanent. Villages changed, priests rotated, and communities evolved. Every song had to be adaptable, every story malleable. Improvisation became second nature. Lines could be altered on the spot, verses restructured mid-performance, and humor adjusted to avoid offense. This flexibility was not only practical, it became a defining characteristic of your artistry. You learned to view every limitation as an opportunity for ingenuity rather than an obstacle. You also observed the broader cultural impact of religious authority. While the church sought to control moral perception, its oversight created shared expectations, rhythms, and cultural touchstones. Hymns, rituals, and ceremonies provided structure that you could reference, parody, or enhance. By understanding these patterns, you were able to craft songs that resonated deeply with audiences while maintaining a delicate balance between reverence and critique. You realized that effective bards were not simply entertainers, but interpreters of social norms, mediators between authority and the populace, and innovators within cultural frameworks. Through careful observation, negotiation, and adaptation, you eventually mastered the interplay between music, morality, and authority. Songs that might have previously caused censure now contained layered meaning, humor, and subtle commentary without drawing punishment. Improvisation allowed for safe experimentation, while clever use of allegory and metaphor satisfied both audience and church. The result was a repertoire of performances that could delight peasants, amuse clergy, and survive the scrutiny of power. By the end of this phase, you understand that navigating the church is as much about perception as it is about artistry. Success requires awareness, creativity, and diplomacy. Your songs have evolved, enriched by experience, constrained by necessity, and refined through continuous adaptation. You have learned that authority can shape art not by suppression alone, but by providing boundaries that foster ingenuity. In negotiating censorship, you have grown as a musician, storyteller, and strategist. Ultimately, your ability to balance the desires of common folk with the expectations of the church becomes a defining skill. You have learned to deliver joy, humor, and resonance within moral frameworks, maintaining authenticity while respecting authority. The life of a bard is a constant negotiation between freedom and restriction, expression and propriety, improvisation and structure. By mastering this delicate dance, you ensure the survival, relevance, and impact of your music across both sacred and secular spaces. Life on the road is never easy, but it becomes exponentially more difficult when the seasons turn against you. The joys of spring and summer, open roads, warm sun, and the laughter of villagers soon give way to autumn chills and winter frost. As a bard, you quickly realize that survival depends as much on endurance, preparation, and adaptability as on talent. Every season brings its own obstacles, and the road offers no forgiveness for those unprepared to endure its relentless cycles. Autumn begins with unpredictable weather. Rain turns dirt paths into thick mud, making travel slow and exhausting. Stale inns and overcrowded taverns offer temporary refuge, yet warmth and comfort are rare commodities. Instruments warp in damp air. Strings break unexpectedly, and repairs are nearly impossible on the road. You learn to protect your lute above all else, often sacrificing personal comfort or food to ensure your instrument survives the elements. The lute, the harp, and your voice become your lifeline. Without them, survival is impossible. Food becomes both a practical concern and a recurring source of stress. Villages are modest, and meals are scarce. You barter songs for sustenance, a loaf of bread, a bowl of stew, or a handful of dried fruit. Payment is inconsistent, sometimes generous, sometimes a token gesture, but it sustains you enough to continue. Hunger sharpens your mind, heightens your awareness, and teaches you improvisation not only in performance, but in daily living. The skill of negotiating for meals, interpreting generosity, and surviving scarcity becomes as vital as mastering a complex ballad. Winter brings a harsher reality. Roads freeze, rivers become treacherous, and exposure threatens both body and instrument. Shelter is minimal, often a barn with livestock or a leaky roofed shed. You sleep on hay that smells faintly of animals, enduring cold nights with only your cloak and determination. Frost stiffens your fingers, making playing nearly impossible. Icy winds crack your lips, threatening the clarity of your voice. Yet, each dawn is an exercise in resilience. You rise, adjust strings, warm your hands over a feeble fire, and continue. Survival requires ingenuity, keeping fingers nimble, voice steady, and instruments intact, despite the relentless cold. The seasons also dictate performance opportunities. Festivals, fairs, and gatherings often cluster around warmer months. Winter brings scarcity of audiences, as villagers focus on survival, preparing for harsh conditions rather than celebrating with music. You must adapt your repertoire for smaller audiences, intimate settings, and unpredictable circumstances. Songs of merriment and abundance may need tempering. Humor and light-hearted tales may be in short supply. Yet, these limitations spur creativity, as you craft pieces that resonate with the realities of hardship, ballads of perseverance, lullabies for children, and tales that provide comfort amid struggle. Festivals in summer and spring present a different kind of challenge. While these events promise larger audiences and potential rewards, they are chaotic and unpredictable. Markets overflow with noise, merchants compete for attention, and drunk nobles or rowdy peasants can disrupt even the most carefully rehearsed performances. Juggling, shouting, and livestock often interrupt the stage, requiring quick improvisation and flexibility. The rewards can be fleeting, small coins, food, or mere recognition, but the risks are high, from physical injury to damaged instruments. Every festival teaches adaptability and the art of reading a crowd, skills honed through years of travel and adversity. Travel itself is grueling. Roads are rarely straight or safe, often winding through forests, hills, and rivers. Encounters with wild animals, bandits, or hostile locals demand vigilance and quick thinking. You learn survival skills, how to secure shelter, conceal instruments, and negotiate passage while maintaining the poise and composure of a performer. The act of moving from village to village becomes a study in endurance, balancing the physical toll with the necessity of practice, rehearsal, and preparation for each new audience. The natural environment is as much a teacher as any mentor or audience. Rain, mud, frost, and wind shape your performances, forcing you to adjust tempo, tone, and vocal projection. You discover how the sound of your lute carries differently in open fields versus dense woods, how a melody must adapt to the acoustics of a crowded hall, and how improvisation can turn environmental challenges into performance opportunities. The road teaches you to be observant, adaptive, and resourceful qualities as essential to a bard as musical skill. With time, you develop a seasonal rhythm. Spring brings travel, festivals, and storytelling under open skies. Summer offers fairs, weddings, and abundant audiences. Autumn demands preparation, cautious movement, and conservation of resources. Winter tests endurance, ingenuity, and resilience. Every season becomes a lesson in patience, strategy, and creative problem solving. You learn to anticipate challenges, plan for contingencies, and make the most of fleeting opportunities. The road is a teacher that never ceases, shaping not only your skills as a bard, but your character as a survivor. The unpredictability of weather, audience, and circumstance also fosters humility. You learn that even the best performance may be interrupted by forces beyond your control, a sudden storm, a sick audience, or an uncooperative livestock. You develop patience, adaptability, and the ability to find meaning in small victories, a smile from a child, a quiet nod from an elder, or a brief applause from a farmer. These moments reinforce the idea that success is not measured in coins or fame, but in connection, resilience, and the persistence of your craft. Survival through the seasons also teaches empathy and social awareness. You observe the struggles of villagers, farmers, and travelers, integrating their experiences into your music. A song about a harsh winter, a failed harvest, or communal celebration resonates because it mirrors lived reality. You become not only a performer, but a chronicler of the human condition, translating hardship and joy into melodies and lyrics that sustain, entertain, and comfort. Your art becomes inseparable from life itself, an evolving dialogue between performer and community. Through repeated seasonal cycles, you refine your instincts. You learn which routes are safer, which inns offer reliable shelter, and which villages are receptive audiences. You anticipate challenges, prepare contingencies, and develop strategies for coping with scarcity, fatigue, and uncertainty. Instruments become extensions of yourself, meticulously cared for. Songs become tools for negotiation, survival, and emotional connection. The road teaches you patience, endurance, and the subtle interplay between skill, circumstance, and adaptability. Ultimately, surviving the seasons shapes your identity as a bard. You are no longer merely a wandering musician. You are a navigator of uncertainty, a master of improvisation, and a chronicler of human experience. The hardships of winter, the chaos of festivals, and the unpredictability of the road have honed not only your musical skill, but your resilience, creativity, and understanding of human nature. You learn that the measure of success is not wealth or fame, but the ability to endure, adapt, and continue creating meaning through song in every circumstance. By the end of this phase, you realize that the seasonal challenges, while daunting, are integral to your development. They provide a framework within which creativity, resourcefulness, and human connection flourish. The road, the weather, and the ever-changing landscape are collaborators in your craft, shaping your artistry, deepening your empathy, and teaching lessons no court or competition could. The life of a medieval bard, with all its hardships and unpredictability, becomes a testament to endurance, ingenuity, and the enduring power of music to survive and connect even in the harshest conditions. After years of wandering the roads, surviving the seasons, and performing for villages, your path leads to the courts of the nobility. For a bard, this is the ultimate test, a place where coin, status, and danger intermingle, and where your skill, wit, and composure are scrutinized more closely than in any village tavern. The promise of steady food, shelter, and payment is alluring, but the stakes are higher. Here, a misstep is remembered. A misheard lyric can offend, and a poorly timed jest may bring disgrace or dismissal. Noble courts are not merely audiences. They are arenas of politics, power, and performance, where your survival depends on strategy as much as talent. The first encounter with a court is overwhelming. Marble floors gleam under torchlight. Banners and tapestries boast lineage and victories, and servants rush through halls with mechanical efficiency. The nobles themselves are statuesque, dressed in vibrant silks, adorned with jewelry that glints in the candlelight. Each movement a demonstration of wealth and influence. You clutch your lute or harp like a shield, aware that one wrong note or verse could shatter the fragile patience of these elite listeners. The air is thick with expectation, ego, and subtle menace. Applause is a currency, as valuable as gold and as precarious as a sword at your side. Preparation for performance is meticulous. You study the noble household, the duke's victories, his alliances, the temperaments of his family and guests. Songs must be tailored precisely. Praise for the right ancestors, flattery for every guest, subtle humor that will amuse without insulting. Improvisation is required, but with boundaries. You must memorize courtly protocols, understand hierarchy, and anticipate every interruption, from a child's curiosity to a jester's antics or a rival bard seeking to sabotage your performance. Each note, each rhyme, each gesture is measured to convey skill, respect, and awareness of the delicate balance between art and politics. Once the performance begins, you are acutely aware of the gaze of authority, Every noble watches closely, measuring your tone, diction, and timing. A single misstep, mispronouncing a name, failing to rhyme properly, or misrepresenting a story could provoke murmurs, laughter at your expense, or worse, public humiliation. You realize quickly that charm and confidence are as vital as technical skill. A quiet pause can convey respect, a well-timed bow can signal deference, and the smallest flourish can impress without overstepping. Survival in the court requires mastery not only of music, but also of social nuance, perception, and manipulation. Improvisation becomes both art and defense. When a noble interrupts with a request or correction, you must respond seamlessly. If asked to praise a recent victory or project a heroic image of a relative, you adapt immediately, crafting verses on the spot that highlight glory without exaggeration, celebrate courage without offending rivals, and flatter without appearing insincere. Each improvisation is a negotiation of language, perception, and ego. Failure is costly, but success brings rewards beyond coin protection, opportunity, and the occasional favor that can extend your reach to other courts. Observing courtly behavior becomes an education in human nature. You notice subtleties, which guests are easily pleased, who is quick to anger, and who is more attuned to humor or clever wordplay. These observations inform not only your performance, but your strategy for survival. A joke that delights one noble may insult another. A flattering metaphor may curry favor or provoke envy. Understanding these dynamics is crucial. A bard who misreads social cues may survive for a night, but one who masters them can navigate a network of patronage that ensures stability and opportunity for months or years. The stakes are not limited to performance alone. Rivalry is intense. Other bards, each seeking patronage and favor, monitor your work, eager to expose mistakes or outperform you. Subtle sabotage, stealing lyrics, whispering rumors, or imitating songs with slight embellishments is common. You quickly learn to protect your repertoire, guard your creative process, and cultivate alliances when possible. Even when no conflict arises, the presence of competition sharpens skill, improvisation, and awareness. The court is not only an audience, but a proving ground, where talent is constantly tested and refined. Rewards, when earned, are tangible yet modest. A loaf of bread, a bed in a warm room, or a token coin may seem meager, but they represent stability, rare on the road. Sometimes, patronage brings more. Invitations to perform for allied households, introductions to influential figures, or the opportunity to participate in larger-scale festivals or religious celebrations sponsored by the elite. Each performance can extend your network, providing future security and recognition. However, with reward comes responsibility, loyalty, discretion, and the careful management of relationships. Misstep and favor can vanish as quickly as it was granted. Cleverness becomes a survival tool. Bards must translate reality into narrative, transforming mundane or flawed deeds into tales of glory, valor, and virtue. A lost skirmish becomes a strategic retreat. A minor victory is elevated to legend. The art lies not in lying outright, but in crafting narratives that honor patron desires, maintain dignity, and entertain audiences. You become both historian and storyteller, shaping perception as carefully as you shape melody. In this environment, creativity and diplomacy intertwine, and your ability to navigate them ensures continued survival and relevance. Over time, the experience teaches resilience, adaptation, and perspective. You recognize that nobles are constrained by their own hierarchies, expectations, and insecurities. Praise, applause, and attention are often more about ego than music. You learn to perform with poise, regardless of response, maintaining dignity, composure, and control over your craft. Confidence becomes both armor and tool, allowing you to navigate complex social hierarchies while keeping your artistry intact. Despite the challenges, the court offers insight into the broader world. Exposure to wealth, politics, and social power deepens understanding of human nature, society, and ambition. Every performance is an exercise in observation, strategy, and improvisation. The lessons learned here, timing, diplomacy, audience awareness, and creative adaptation, enhance artistry in ways that village life alone cannot provide. You understand not only how to entertain, but also how to survive, negotiate, and thrive in a complex social ecosystem. By the end of this phase, you are a seasoned performer capable of navigating the nuanced demands of noble courts. Survival requires skill, intelligence, and constant adaptation. Every song, story, and improvisation serves a dual purpose: to entertain and to maintain favor. You recognize the power of perception, the importance of audience awareness, and the delicate balance between artistry and diplomacy. In the noble courts, you learn that the life of a bard is not only about music, it is a constant negotiation between talent, circumstance, and human ego. Ultimately, the court teaches lessons that transcend music: patience, observation, strategic thinking, and the ability to find meaning and satisfaction in small victories. The wealth, applause, and recognition may be fleeting, but the skills gained, relationships cultivated, and understanding acquired are invaluable. Through navigating the courts, you emerge not only as a skilled musician and storyteller, but as a master of adaptation, capable of surviving, thriving, and creating impact in a world governed as much by power and perception as by melody and rhythm. Time, which had once seemed infinite during your early wanderings, begins to reveal its inevitable truth. Youth fades, and with it, the body that carried you through seasons, roads, and performances starts to betray its limits. For a medieval bard, aging is not merely a reflection in the mirror. It is a visceral, relentless transformation that touches hands, voice, endurance, and resilience. Each step becomes heavier, each chord harder to strike, and each song requires more effort than it once did. Survival, which once relied on youthful vigor, now demands wisdom, adaptation, and careful preservation of resources. The first signs are subtle. Fingers that once moved with fluid precision now hesitate over strings, cracking notes where once they rang pure. Lips that projected with clarity in taverns and village squares begin to dry and crack, the voice losing its tonal range, vibrato, and power. Legs and back, hardened by years of travel and mud-soaked roads, ache with every mile. Instruments, already delicate, demand more careful handling. Minor mistakes in tuning that were once inconsequential now compound, threatening the quality of performance. You realize that survival no longer depends purely on skill, but also on conserving the body, managing fatigue, and adapting your methods. Winter nights, once merely a challenge of endurance, become battles for warmth and preservation. Sleep is disrupted by stiffness, hypothermia, or the constant ache of joints. The hay that once sufficed as bedding now offers little comfort. The chill seeps deeper into bones, hardened by decades of travel. Food, always a scarce commodity, becomes more critical as your metabolism changes. A bowl of thin stew or a loaf of bread no longer sustains as efficiently, and exhaustion sets in faster than it once did. You learn to ration energy, prioritize warmth, and modify routes to reduce exposure, even if it means avoiding lucrative opportunities. The road itself becomes less forgiving. Paths, once traversable with ease, now demand caution. Crossing rivers, scaling hills, or navigating muddy terrain takes longer and carries higher risk of injury. Encounters with wild animals, bandits, or hostile weather are more threatening, for the body responds slower and recovers less quickly. Yet, experience teaches you to anticipate hazards, improvise solutions, and avoid unnecessary risks. Wisdom, rather than raw strength, becomes your greatest survival tool. Performances, too, require adaptation. The stamina that allowed for long hours of song, elaborate gestures, and continuous interaction with audiences diminishes. Songs are shortened, rests strategically placed, and complex passages simplified to prevent strain. You learn to focus on expression, timing, and emotional resonance rather than technical perfection. Even as physical capability wanes, mastery over narrative, phrasing, and performance psychology grows. You understand how to evoke laughter, tears, or applause with subtlety, relying on experience rather than brute force. Aging also brings a shift in audience and opportunity. Youthful exuberance and spectacle once drew attention and admiration, but now credibility, depth, and wisdom resonate more than speed or athletic display. Peasants, once fascinated by flashy tricks or energetic ballads, now respond to stories filled with nuance, moral insight, and shared experience. The very limitations imposed by age allow you to connect on a deeper level. Audiences sense the authenticity, endurance, and layered understanding embedded in your performance. The songs of youth give way to ballads of endurance, survival, and the human condition. Rivalry, once a source of energy and entertainment, takes on a new dimension. Younger bards arrive with fresh energy, faster fingers, and louder voices, often attracting attention that was once yours. This is a humbling experience, forcing adaptation. Rather than competing in raw technical skill, you shift focus to the art of storytelling, improvisation, and audience engagement. Cleverness, experience, and empathy become your weapons, allowing you to maintain relevance even as physical superiority fades. You learn that survival and impact are no longer about being the loudest or fastest, but about being the most thoughtful, perceptive, and enduring. The decline of youth also brings contemplation. Nights by campfires or in inns are filled with reflection on past performances, journeys, and triumphs. You remember the first time you sang for peasants in a muddy square? The initial triumph of impressing a noble, and the countless small victories of survival. You understand that the road has shaped not only your craft, but your character. Pain, exhaustion, and adversity have forged resilience, empathy, and creativity qualities that remain even as the body weakens. Health challenges become constant companions. Frostbite, illness, and injuries sustained years prior accumulate, complicating daily survival. Each performance requires careful management of physical limitations. You learn to pace yourself, delegate tasks when possible, and conserve energy for crucial moments. Simple acts, strumming, breathing, walking, demand awareness and mindfulness. The bard who once relied on youthful endurance now relies on planning, foresight, and resourcefulness. Yet, there is a profound gift in this stage: perspective. You can now see the arc of a career, the evolution of art, and the enduring impact of music beyond immediate recognition. While fame and fortune may have been fleeting or inconsistent, the connections forged, lessons learned, and melodies shared have created ripples that extend far beyond your immediate experience. You observe younger bards, villagers, and audiences with understanding and compassion, knowing that every note carries history, every lyric reflects struggle, and every performance is part of a larger continuum of storytelling. Aging transforms ambition into legacy. Early in your career, success was measured by applause, coins, or patronage. Now, it is measured by influence, memory, and the ability to transmit knowledge and culture to those who follow. Songs are crafted not only for immediate delight, but also for endurance. Melodies that can be hummed, verses remembered, and stories retold. You become a conduit for cultural preservation, ensuring that the human experience, its joys, hardships, triumphs, and follies, endures beyond the limitations of your body. The decline of youth also brings reflection on mortality. Every mile walked, every stage performed, and every note sung reminds you of impermanence. You recognize that physical limitations will eventually prevent you from performing altogether. Yet, this awareness fuels intentionality. Every performance is imbued with care, presence, and meaning. You sing not merely to entertain, but to capture the essence of life itself, the struggle, the beauty, the absurdity, and the fleeting joy of existence. Finally, this stage teaches acceptance and adaptation. While youth and strength cannot be reclaimed, wisdom, creativity, and influence can flourish. You focus on songs that endure, performances that resonate deeply, and connections that leave lasting impressions. You understand that survival in the life of a bard is not only about enduring the physical challenges of travel, weather, or performance. It is about shaping experiences, influencing audiences, and leaving a legacy that echoes beyond the reach of your body. By the end of this phase, you recognize that the decline of youth is not an end, but a transformation. Physical limitations may constrain action, but they sharpen perception, deepen artistry, and crystallize purpose. The bard who once relied on vigor now relies on wisdom, foresight, and emotional resonance. Through endurance, adaptation, and intentionality, you create a legacy that transcends mortality. Songs remembered, stories passed down, and a life of artistry that continues to resonate long after the last performance. After a lifetime of wandering, performing, and surviving, the bard reaches the final stage of life, the understanding that while the body may fail, the legacy of art and song endures. Every note strummed, every lyric sung, and every story told has the potential to outlive the very hands and voice that created it. Immortality, for a bard, is not wealth, fame, or titles. It is the echoes of your melodies carried by countless others, the subtle imprint on the memory of communities, and the whispered remembrance of lives touched by your songs. You observe the natural cycle of influence. Songs once performed in muddy village squares are hummed in distant towns. Tales crafted for festivals are retold by new voices in new generations. Each performance, no matter how small or humble, contributes to a cultural chain. You realize that while few may remember your name, the essence of your work persists in rhythm, melody, and narrative. Your music becomes a living archive, preserving history, emotion, and shared human experience. Even the nobility, once a capricious audience, contribute unknowingly to your legacy. A tale glorifying a duke or immortalizing a knight spreads beyond the court, carried by servants, travelers, and merchants. The story transforms with each retelling, taking on a life of its own. What began as flattery becomes folklore, a testament to your skill in shaping perception. You recognize that the bard's true power lies not merely in performance, but in shaping narrative, weaving experience into myth, and ensuring that the threads of human experience remain vivid across time. Communities of peasants, often overlooked in the historical record, become your most enduring audience. Their laughter, sorrow, and applause are the lifeblood of your legacy. They remember songs long after the performer has passed, often unaware of the origin, yet faithfully preserving the melodies and stories. A lullaby sung to a child becomes a memory embedded in adulthood. A humorous tale retold at a wedding or festival carries forward lessons of joy, resilience, and social connection. In these moments, the bard's influence surpasses recognition. It becomes part of the collective culture. The concept of immortality through song reshapes your understanding of purpose. You no longer perform solely for immediate reward, acclaim, or survival. Each note carries the weight of potential legacy. Even the mistakes, improvisations, and imperfect renditions contribute to this living archive. You understand that perfection is less important than persistence. Repetition and adaptation ensure that melodies and stories survive beyond the limitations of individual memory. This perspective brings both solace and clarity. The transient nature of life contrasts with the enduring nature of art. You also recognize the collaborative dimension of legacy. Other bards, musicians, and storytellers amplify your work, integrating melodies and verses into their own repertoires. Songs evolve, transform, and reach new audiences, taking on nuances you never intended. Yet this evolution is not theft, but continuity. The spirit of your creation lives on, adapted to new contexts, enriched by the creativity of others. The bard's influence, therefore, is both personal and communal, intertwined with the broader tapestry of cultural expression. Historical memory plays a surprising role. Occasionally, a monk, scribe, or scholar records a verse or melody, attributing it anonymously or to someone else entirely. Names may be forgotten, lyrics altered, but the essence persists. Centuries later, archaeologists, historians, and enthusiasts may uncover fragments of your work, connecting them to the human experience long past. In this way, the bard achieves a kind of immortality not through fame, but through cultural resonance, leaving marks on the world that outlast individual existence. Stories of heroism, folly, and everyday life endure precisely because they resonate with universal human themes. Your songs about village hardships, love, loss, humor, and survival transcend time, geography, and social hierarchy. They capture the essence of life, preserving emotion and experience across generations. In essence, the bard becomes a vessel for collective memory, ensuring that the human condition, its joys, struggles, and contradictions, is recorded, experienced, and understood even in absence. You notice that legacy is both intentional and accidental. Some songs endure because they are carefully crafted to appeal to memory, rhythm, and emotion. Others survive by chance, a child humming a tune at play, a traveler recalling a ballad in a distant town, or a story repeated in whispered conversation around a hearth. Influence, you realize, is not entirely controlled. It is a living, evolving phenomenon, shaped by human connection, circumstance, and the persistence of emotion embedded in melody and verse. Physical decline sharpens focus on legacy. As the body ages, energy wanes, yet creativity persists. You prioritize songs that are memorable, narratives that are clear, and performances that resonate emotionally. The emphasis shifts from personal glory to enduring impact. Each performance becomes an investment in cultural memory. You observe the faces of your audiences, children listening wide-eyed, elders nodding knowingly, and understand that these moments, fleeting as they are, form the foundation of enduring influence. The wisdom gained from years on the road, in courts, and among villages informs your approach. You understand rhythm, timing, and narrative structure, not just as technical skill, but as tools to embed memory. You balance repetition with novelty, humor with poignancy, and drama with reflection. You craft songs to endure, using storytelling techniques honed over decades of observation and practice. Each lyric, each note, is chosen with both immediate effect and long-term resonance in mind. In this stage, reflection becomes as important as creation. You think of early struggles, harsh winters, hungry audiences, rival bards, and the physical toll of the road. These experiences inform the depth of your work, infusing songs with authenticity and relatability. Listeners, even those unfamiliar with the hardships, sense the truth within the art. Emotion, resilience, and shared experience transcend specific historical or geographic context, ensuring that the essence of your song endures. Finally, you recognize that the greatest gift of your craft is connection. Immortality through song is not measured in coins, fame, or monuments. It is measured in the moments where your music resonates, where it comforts, entertains, and unites. Across time, unseen audiences carry melodies, stories, and emotions forward, linking generations through shared human experience. In the end, the bard's legacy is not in the memory of individual fame, but in the enduring echo of the human spirit expressed through music. Even as your hands weaken, your voice falters, and your footsteps slow, the work continues. Songs, like rivers, flow beyond your immediate control, shaping culture, preserving memory, and inspiring others. The roads you once traveled, the inns you performed in, and the festivals you enlivened leave traces not in stone or coin, but in the living tradition of song. Future bards, villagers, and storytellers, whether aware of your contribution or not, continue the chain. Your influence becomes timeless, woven into the fabric of society itself. As your life draws toward its close, you find a profound sense of fulfillment. Physical decline is inevitable, hardships unavoidable, yet the immortality of art, the persistence of song, and the echoes of human experience grant meaning to all effort. Every melody played, every verse recited, every story shared, ensures that while the body may fail, the essence of your creativity endures. The bard lives on, not in life or wealth, but in memory, culture, and the eternal rhythm of song carried through the hearts and minds of generations. Through this enduring legacy, the bard achieves a form of immortality that transcends time, mortality, and social recognition. Names may be forgotten, faces fade, and instruments decay, yet the resonance of song, crafted, performed, and preserved, continues to shape human experience. Your life, spent in hardship, travel, and dedication to art, leaves a mark that endures beyond the physical, immortalized in melody, memory, and the shared humanity that music preserves. In the final reflection, you see the full arc of a life lived in pursuit of connection, artistry, and endurance. The journey from village squares to noble courts, through harsh winters and bustling festivals, through rivalry, triumph, and survival, culminates not in fame or fortune, but in lasting impact. The bards who follow will walk similar paths, face similar struggles, and contribute their own verses to the living tapestry. And in this continuity, the music, the stories, and the essence of your artistry will remain a testament to the enduring power of song, the human spirit, and the quiet immortality earned through a life fully lived in the service of art. As we draw the curtain on the life of the medieval bard, it becomes clear that this journey was never about wealth, fame, or comfort. From the mud-soaked village squares to the polished halls of noble courts, from the laughter of peasants to the scrutiny of rulers, the bard lived a life defined by resilience, creativity, and connection. Every hardship endured, every song performed, and every mile traveled contributed to a legacy that could not be measured in coins or accolades, but in memory, culture, and human experience. What stands out most is the profound truth that even in the face of relentless adversity, art has the power to endure. The bard's melodies, once heard by fleeting audiences, ripple across time, carried in memory, retold in song, and preserved in the hearts of those touched by the music. Fame may have been fleeting, comfort rarely found, yet the impact of a life dedicated to craft and storytelling is eternal. This is the quiet, often overlooked, but deeply meaningful form of immortality, the continuation of influence through connection, expression, and shared humanity. So, whether it was a rickety tavern, a winter festival, or the grand court of a demanding noble, the bard's journey reminds us that true value is not in recognition or reward, but in the persistence of effort, the courage to create despite uncertainty, and the ability to touch others in ways that outlast time itself. In each note strummed, each lyric sung, and each story told, the bard lives on an echo of endurance, artistry, and the unbroken human spirit. Thank you all for joining me on this quiet journey through the life of a medieval bard. I hope it has given you a glimpse into the challenges, the artistry, and the enduring spirit of those who live to sing against the odds. If you enjoyed this story, please consider liking the video and subscribing for more explorations into history, myth, and the human experience. Share your thoughts in the comments. What part of the bard's journey resonated with you most? Until next time, may your own stories be heard, your melodies remembered, and your courage carried forward.